The Critical Role cast F's around and finds out in the brutal last episode of the year, and some serious backlash hits the Baldur's Gate 3 devs.
You were the chosen one!
Before we dive into Critical Role facing the consequences and some seriously bad Larian Studios press, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons? It's free, it's fast, and it's the only gift we're asking for this holiday season. And then, let's dive into the news. Critical Role's last episode was one massive combat which started with Brennan revealing that yes, Tyranny actually did save from petrification with her role to end last week's show, but was then almost immediately followed up by Thimble failing and actually starting to turn to stone. In fact, this massive 3.5-hour combat featured a challenge rating 8 boss who was tossing around 2,000-pound statues with ease, and honestly, if Brennan was not being so incredibly charitable and offering the cast some potentially game-breaking bonuses that they were not technically entitled to, the entire party would have almost certainly wiped. As it was, their decision to kind of just go in with half a plan as Tyranny rushed forward disguised as Octus led to almost every single member of the table going unconscious or being petrified at one point or another. And if not for everyone using their stored level ups except for Taor, who missed nearly every single attack this entire combat except the very last one, and of course some generous rule of cool rules fudging from Brennan, the party wipe was definitely coming. Even Wulfric nearly died at one point, and after seeing this combat we just don't see how Robbie Damon, despite his pledge to us in our interview last month, is gonna keep Brennan from killing that dog this campaign. One of the reasons they did manage to survive is Thimble and Taor both taking up Brennan on his homebrewed Desperate Measures mechanic, and taking on failed death saving throws to power up their abilities, as Thimble took 2 failed death saving throws to deal critical damage to the CR8 Knight they were trying to face down, which realistically is the only reason the party survived that combat. But at the end of the combat, we learned that these failed death saving throws, which Taor also took one of to re-roll a missed attack, which of course he then missed again on, much to the incredible frustration of Travis, are not going away. They are sticking around, at least for a while, meaning that Thimble and Taor are now just flat out flirting with death every combat, as a single failed death saving throw will send Laura Bailey back to the drawing board for a new character. We're not sure exactly how long these failed death saving throws will stick around, because there was strangely no cooldown posted yet for episode 10 to clarify, but still, in the very next combat things are going to be incredibly dangerous for those two. The soldiers' table has been playing fast and loose and relying a lot on luck, and that all seemed to catch up to them tonight in a incredibly fascinating combat. Oh, and we did get confirmation that House Royce is basically just destroyed, as the big bad was wearing gauntlets that Thimble recognized as once belonging to the brother of Lady Aranessa, so House Taconis and the Candescent Creed of House Halavar are successfully killing their way into more and more power, and Thimble's last connection to the Fey world seems to be completely gone now. On the plus side, they did recover Taor's brother Sid, who had been turned into a statue that was being treated with a lot of care by the Taconis soldiers stationed beneath the castle, but it remains unclear if these statues serve a purpose themselves or are simply a Star Wars-esque frozen in carbonite scenario to transport prisoners with no risk of escape. But we'll have to wait till mid-January to find out, as we are returning again to the soldiers' table after Critical Role comes back from a nearly month-long holiday break. And with those failed death saving throws still hanging over the heads of Taor and Thimble, Travis and Laura may be showing up with some backup characters pretty early in 2026.
We're all gonna die.
In other fantasy news, Larian Studios, the devs behind the amazing Baldur's Gate 3, which just passed the 20 million units sold mark this week, by the way, is facing massive backlash on multiple fronts after the head of their studio, Sven Vincke, said it would be, quote, irresponsible for us not to evaluate new technologies like generative AI in an interview with Bloomberg before he was forced to try and clarify his stance after extreme fan backlash, promising that AI was being used the way they would use an art book for reference and that they were actively hiring more concept artists, not trimming those jobs and replacing them with AI. Although he did so after going full emo and deleting his social media headers and bio and changing his avatar after all the outrage. To make matters worse, new reports then surfaced about allegedly terrible hiring practices at the game studio that had been such a massive fan favorite, with multiple industry veterans like Bruno Dias, one of the game writers of Fallout London, calling out the studio for abusive and borderline illegal hiring moves, saying, quote, Larian's horrible hiring process is an open secret in the industry. Insane amounts of unpaid work and writing tests, excessive numbers of interviews, months and months of back and forth, etc. Which was backed up by other game writers like Zoe Quinn saying that they were known for being a big, unpaid but playable writing test company. And even commenters in the Blue Sky thread alleging that they had been forced to sit through a dozen interviews and do huge amounts of unpaid writing tests before just being passed over. So while Larian may be currently limiting AI to some kind of concept art research tool, between the initial AI bullish comments made by their CEO and the sudden outing of some very questionable hiring practices by former applicants, suddenly what was the gold standard of video game studios for many fans has ended the year with its name tarnished and in the mud. So hopefully their new Divinity game can avoid more controversy and get them back on track, or 2026 is going to be a rough year for the formerly beloved makers of Baldur's Gate 3. And that's all we have time for this week, so what was your favorite story? Let us know down in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.